Welcome to Thursday Night Talk. This is a show where we discuss the week in Humboldt, the local issues, and the local personalities with the local personalities. I'm Talvi Fried, and I will be your local host for the next hour. Tonight, our topic, if you are not aware, if you haven't stepped outside of your house or live under a rock, you may notice artists are just everywhere, and it's summertime, so everybody's blooming. They are showcasing their work and inviting you in to their studios. It is North Coast Open Studios time, and this fun and interesting event is headed into its final weekend. So if you haven't gone out, well, maybe you might want to crawl out from under that rock. Here to give you some reasons not to miss it is the fabulous Monica Topping, who, in addition to being the administrative director for the Ink People, is also the events coordinator, as well as Monica is a participating artist. Joining us are two other artists, stained glass artist Colleen Clifford and painter Andrew Daniel. Welcome to everyone.
Thanks, Talvi.
Thanks for having us.
Cheers. So let's start off with, what is North Coast Open Studios?
Oh, that is a good place to start, isn't it? North Coast Open Studios is a 2-weekend community art event where artists all over the county open their studios to the public. So folks can show up at an artist studio and kind of see their creative disaster or their natural habitat, as Christina Anastasia likes to say. You can visit a gallery and see finished art all year round. But this is the opportunity to, be reminded that even these artists start with a blank canvas or, just plain sheets of glass.
Let's just skip right into that, because right before we went on air, there was a fun conversation that was being had about what people expect an artist studio to look like versus what it actually is. And Colleen, I know you had some thoughts about that one.
Yeah, I was just saying to Monica before we started that I have all these projects that I wanted to finish for the weekend, and they're not quite done yet. So I'm scrambling to try to finish some, but it also is really nice for people to get to see things in progress as they go from start to completion. They can see different steps of the process. So I will have a lot of things kind of pre-finished stage, and hopefully some of these will get finished up. But also the creative disaster that Monica mentioned is definitely my habitat for sure.
I found that in the past, I've been doing this for more years than I can count, and in the past I would try to cram and get a whole bunch of stuff done in time for open studios. And then I find that the stuff was still hanging out for the most part after open studios, and so since then I've really been very strategic, and I'll pick 1 or 2 pieces that I'm going to try to finish before the deadline of people showing up in the studio, and besides that, just focus on making the place look clean and tidy and letting people know about it.
Great tip. That's a great tip.
That's a great tip. You can choose your battles.
Right.
I'm not sure where I heard this, though it seems like a potential fact that is repeated quite often, that Humboldt County has the highest artists per capita in California, potentially the United States, maybe the world, if you want to grandiose
definitely
statement.
That.
Because everyone's an artist out here, though showcasing that art can be very difficult. I feel like Humboldt has fostered this sense of openness and like open studios, though where for those artists that are kind of hiding out, how would they get involved and kind of get over that shyness. I feel like art is something that you create and it can be very, very personal. And it's really scary putting something out there that other people will look at and think their own thoughts about. So are there programs, places, groups, perhaps, you know, the ink people, where people can go and kind of, you know, instead of being that like isolated, introverted artist, they can be an introverted, less isolated artist in a group. Is there a place for them?
Yes. I love that. I mean, yeah, we do have the Ink People Center for the Arts, which is an art and culture nonprofit that is located in Eureka. We love having conversations with artists, you know, who are getting started, or even ones that are far past just getting started, but, you know, just getting ready to, like, you know, announce themselves, like let themselves be seen in the world, come out of their caves. But, you know, I mean, there's so many different places. I mean, there's critique groups, you know, amongst the painters, and there's community art shows, not just in the Ink People's Gallery, but beyond as well. There's a lot of places that are opportunities to kind of get involved, get, you know, dip your toe into the water, I would think.
Yeah, and Open Studios itself is wonderful for that, because you get to interact with your community and your potential customers and viewers and supporters, and you get to see what lights them up and what they're inspired by, and maybe even collaborate with them on a custom project. So you really get that community-centric mind working, like front and center, right when they walk in. You get to connect with them.
If I were to recommend one place for an artist who is ready to come out of the woodwork, would be to the Redwood Art Association. Anybody can show there, and it's a big group of artists, and you can kind of start there and network out from that community gallery. But I did want to talk about how with Open Studios, I used to go on the tour before I started showing in the tour, and I really miss going on the tour because it's such a unique experience. A lot of artists probably start out being able to visit some of their local artist heroes and being able to just see the world through so many different lenses. One time I went on the tour with a friend who has to do things in a very particular way, let's say. So he wanted to start out at number 1 in Trinidad, North Trinidad, and work down 1, 2, 3, 4. And we got through about 20 studios that day, and he wanted to do all of them over the course of the 4 days. And it was his car, and it was only going to be his way. And I got totally burnt out, but I did get to see so many different perspectives, so many different, you know, people's houses and the creative ways that artists live. And I got to drive down all these unusual roads in Humboldt County and see parts that I had never seen before. And so it's a really unique perspective, and there's just so much creativity in our community.
Yeah, that is actually a really, that's a good point. And I kind of love the idea of just following the numbers down, because from the coordinator perspective, the event is organized, the numbering is organized from either south to north or north to south, and then alphabetic between, or like within the regions. So all of the Trinidad artists are alphabetized by last name, for example. So I can imagine how much just like ping pong there must have been within those regions, following them number by number, because they're not geographic within the town, just, you know, alphabetized within the town. The way that I usually do it, because even though I am a participating artist, I am in the open by appointment section of the guidebook. So we've got a couple of artists in that section. And that's because I am out at the event. I mean, I'm coordinating the event, so I kind of need to see everybody, or as many as I can anyway. And so usually every day I start at either the furthest south or the furthest north, and I work my way in. And see as many artists as I can within a day. So for example, last weekend, between the Friday art night from 6 to 9 on that first weekend, and then Saturday, Sunday, I think we saw about 45 artists last weekend.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that's
And I saw
impressive.
there's 134 locations this year. So do you think we'll get to all of them?
No, I think it's actually physically impossible to get to all of them in the limited event hours. I wish I could. I think in 2019, which is my last biggest year of participation, we had 140 that year, and this year we've got 143 artists participating, including the 3 that are on the website only. And I think we maxed out at like 90 studio visits between the basically 4.5 event days.
Respect.
But I'm going to keep trying.
Which we're talking about number of artists. Is this an increase from years in the past?
It is an increase from years like prior to 2019. Sorry, I'm trying to get my phone in a place where it's not going to be wiggling here. Sorry about that. So 2019, I took over the event, coordinating the event in 2014. And throughout those years, I like to have at least 100 participating artists. That's always been a kind of an annual goal. And in 2019, we managed to get 140 participating artists or locations. And that includes some galleries and things like that. So it's not all just, individual artists, and some of those spaces are open throughout the year, but they make a point of offering something a little extra and special for North Coast Open Studios. So this year, there's 140 that are published in the guidebook, so that I think they're numbered up to 136 or so. They open by appointments, don't have numbers on them because they don't have a place on the map. We want people kind of getting a hold and making an appointment to go visit them, not just popping by during the event weekends. And then we had the 3 that registered a bit later and got onto the website. So this year is my biggest year as the coordinator of this event since 2014. This is my biggest year of participation, which is very exciting. Especially considering, last year we brought the event back after a 2-year hiatus for, reasons. And it wasn't the biggest year ever, but also it was a really important year. It was so important to a lot of artists and a lot of visitors that had really been missing this event. And I mean, I think Andrew and Colleen can speak for the importance of participating in North Coast Open Studios and getting that public face within this event. So having that be gone for 2 years was really rough for everybody. Yeah. And so to have it back, it really feels like this is the first year we've been back like really in full force, where it's been, I went back to the multiple months of planning that I would usually have, where last year it was, I kind of had to set a make or break date as I was watching pandemic numbers every day. And there was a point where it was like, well, if we're going to do this, I need to know by X date. And we decided to do it. And it was just kind of a mad dash through registration and everything else that it takes to put the guidebook together and the website and all that stuff. So not a thing I would do again, given the option, but good to know it can happen.
It was special. It was such a welcoming back to being a participant in something, because Open Studios was one of the first things that was canceled when, reasons. And that was a rough one because nobody knew it was coming, and it's such a wonderful experience. But also a lot of artists appreciate the financial boom that they get when people come visit them and purchase their art. And last year it was wonderful to see everybody. I had a great populated year. People were coming out to see it and participate, and it was one of my best and most visited years.
That's awesome. Yeah, for me, I'm going to talk finances for a second, but I have a credit card that I put all my art supplies on for the year, and then after open studios, I pay off the credit card. And
Nice.
so, yeah, so those 2 years, I was just like, oh, I've got to find a different way to pay off this credit card, because it's not like I'm going to stop buying art supplies.
Right.
I'm curious to see. I almost wish there was, for the artists to put out pre-pandemic art versus the art they made during and then after, just because internal conflicts and external conflicts really affect what people create. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious, did your art change because of the happenings?
Mine sure did. I was in the habit of meeting in groups and painting with people outdoors. And even though outdoors is supposed to be a safe place to paint, those groups pretty much shut down during COVID, or the first half of it at least. And I got pretty darn comfortable painting in the studio and just enjoying my own company. I don't know, having the whole world kind of shut down, even though I still had to work my normal job, it was just great to not have all these extra appointments and stuff, and to just really find my own internal voice and connect to it.
That's cool. I would say mine changed because I went smaller. I did more online sales, and so when things shut down, all the fairs were closed. I have classes that were canceled, and the gallery I'm in closed for several months. And as other people did, I jumped onto online sales, and so it shifted my work to making smaller batch pieces. And I had to learn how to ship things and buy the right boxes and figure out shipping costs. And it was a scramble. And it wasn't ideal, but I've learned all that through the years now. And I'm really glad I know it now. And so all the custom projects I had on my plate I still was able to finish those, but I wasn't visiting people's homes as much. And so I wasn't able to push that part of my business as making custom pieces for people's homes. So I did do a lot more personal designs and still showing them out at galleries and stuff, but it changed in that regard.
I can imagine.
Colleen,
Really,
can I encourage you, Colleen, to talk about a specific design that people might have heard about?
Right. Okay. Yeah. I did make one glass piece. It was the first piece I made going back to my studio. I took 2 weeks off. My kids were out of school. I had to jump into distance learning. So I wasn't in my studio for 2 weeks. And when I finally got back out there, I made a glass representation of the flatten the curve image that we've all seen, that graph, the tall curve of what it would be if we didn't shelter in place, and the lower curve if we did shelter in place. And I made a small representation of that, and it kind of blew up and got out to the right people. People were sharing it with their doctor friends, their frontline workers, and someone shipped it to Dr. Fauci as a gift, which was really cool. So that was a really encouraging thing. It kind of made me feel like, okay, we're going to get through this. People are supporting the arts, and I'm not able to save anyone's life here, but I can share something with the people who do. So that was my connection with the world at that time.
neat.
So one thing that we haven't discussed that we'll take a quick break, but when we get back, a lot of people aren't sure what exactly it is you all do as artists and what kind of artists they can see. So we'll be right back. This is Thursday Night Talk. We're talking about North Coast Open Studios and all art all the time in Humboldt County. See you in a couple seconds. back to Thursday Night Talk. I am your local host, Talvi Fried, and I'm here with local artists Monica Topping, Andrew Daniel, and Colleen Clifford. Before the break, we talked a bit about what North Coast Open Studios is, what you can experience when you go see them, a little bit about how you can experience it. We'll get more into specific details on that in a moment. Though, let's do a quick roundtable. Let's start with Andrew. What type of art do you do? What type of art do you do?
Gosh, it just depends on the day, right? Lately, I've been really focused on landscape painting, doing studio work, and I've collected a lot of photos over the years painting, and now I want to kind of dive into them really deeply and kind of do large works and pull out the poetry of what I'm seeing. So editing out things, figuring out what to accentuate, and really trying to figure out what it is about a special moment in time that really speaks to me and see if I can express it. But I've got at my studio like over 300 pieces of artwork, and they range for, over 15 years probably of painting in Humboldt County. And so there's just all kinds of things to see.
Colleen?
Well, I make stained glass, and that ranges from custom commission windows for people's homes to single hanging pieces in gallery windows that people can purchase, and also smaller things like sun catchers, boxes, little ornaments, and all of that uses the copper foil method of stained glass. And I do a variety of styles. I can't land on any one particular thing, but over the years, I know that I like a lot of bold colors, and I like a lot of flowing lines, which, works really well for a lot of the inspiration around here. We've got our beautiful redwood forests and the oceans, the beaches, gorgeous flora and fauna. We've got pelicans and poppies. So I'm always happy to be inspired by our local scenery. And I also do series of androgynous and female forms in various poses, just being either active or in repose, just trying to tell a story with a simple image. So I do a lot of variety within my medium, but I stick to stained glass.
It's I guess if you enjoy it and it calls to you and you still want to keep doing it and you happen to be really good at it, it makes sense to me that you stick with stained glass. Like, you're really good at it, you seem to love it. So that's amazing that you found that passion and that other people are able to appreciate it. Because that's just nice. Monica, I saved you for last with this question because I do want you to tell people what you've done, but you've also, I believe, won a local award or grant for what you do. And then I want to so two-part question is what do you do as an artist, and then what are the artists that people can see? What type of media are they opening up for others to see during North Coast Open Studios?
Yeah, absolutely. So I make jewelry primarily out of entirely recycled glass. So I make beads. When I first started, I did only liquor and soda bottles. And so actually in 2020, or at the end of 2020, I was named the City of Eureka's Artist of the Year because the Eureka Mayor, Susan Seaman at the time, said I was using the artistic material of the year, empty liquor bottles, to make my art. I actually did an entire wind chime that was in a Morris Graves show about the pandemic that was made entirely out of bottles that I had been given during the first year of the pandemic. Because I really rely very much on my very selfless friends and family to save those empty liquor bottles for me, for my supplies. And then actually during the last couple of years, I have realized that I can work with like broken collectible glass. So everything from like broken fire and light, you know, things like earthquakes and cats and, you know, just random, just awful things that happen to people's glass collections. They happen, and instead of throwing them away or tossing them in the recycling bin, I can get my hands on it, and I can either melt them down into beads or cut out the shapes and then make pendants, kind of similar to what Colleen's doing with her stained glass, but out of collectible glass. So some of it's vintage, some of it's more current, but it's all recycled. And then as far as the event goes, this actually kind of reminds me that, you know, amongst the things that I love about open studios, which in any given day, I can come up with at least 5 things that I absolutely love about this event. And one of them is just the variety of art that people are making around here. I mean, you can take 12 artists who are painting landscapes, for example, if that's like the main thing that they do, and you can look at those 12 different artists' work and be able to see differences in the, you know, in how each of those 12 artists kind of represents what they see in this world. We can have multiple stained glass artists even participating in North Coast Open Studios, but from what Colleen's doing with her work versus what any other artist is doing with their work is going to be very different. We've got glass blowers down at the Glass Garage in the Mendenhall Studios in Eureka. We've got, oh my gosh, we've got painters, we've got ceramic artists who are all doing very different things. In fact, if you pick up the guidebook for North Coast Open Studios, which is out and around in the community, in your favorite art supporting local, you know, locations, including galleries and grocery stores, and then if you can't find them there, definitely at the Ink People office in Old Town. Each of the artists has their categories, quote unquote, listed under their photo in the guidebook. And we have a bingo game in the guidebook that's set up to kind of get visitors out of their comfort zone and encourages folks to maybe go a little further, you know, go a little further out of your way to go visit artists, go and visit artists who do different types of work. And if you hit a bingo in one direction, so you go to a studio, you have an artist sign off, you know, if they do stained glass or they do ceramics or whatever it is that they do, and send that in to me. And it'll go into a drawing that'll happen a couple weeks after the event. You've got a couple weeks to turn it back in, and we're going to be doing a drawing for a couple of MasterCard gift cards. So almost the universal gift card. It's not exactly cash, but pretty darn close. So we really want to encourage folks to visit artists that, you know, there are some folks who are going out and visiting ceramic artists. And it's like, that's cool. I love the ceramic artists that we've got, but go visit our glass artists, go visit some painters, you know, go visit some fiber artists, go see something different, because you never know what you're going to find that you didn't realize you might actually really love.
That is one thing about art, that there's so many different types of art out there, and I love performance art. I love seeing performers. It's always amazing to me what people can create in a moment that is very fleeting, and it feels like, wow, this is. I love all types of art for sure, though it's nice to be able to go and be like, this is a concrete thing that some human made, that came from their brain, that somehow they knew how to put it together. And I've had a few discussions with people about what is an artist, what makes a person an artist. And so instead of me saying what I've come to conclusions of, let's do a round robin on what is an artist. Let's start off with Andrew again.
I always feel like an artist is someone who says they're an artist. Like anybody can claim that mantle, and I encourage everyone to claim that mantle. And then the next question is the art relevant to you as a viewer or as an experiencer of it? Does it speak to you, and on what level, and how does it change your perception? So those are the kind of conversations that I'm interested in about that question.
Oh, that was so good. That's exactly it. It's kind of a self-titled thing, I think. And then yeah, if it's relevant to other people, that's perfect. The questions I'm always grappling with are art versus craft. Stained glass is a pretty crafty medium. And I think people are exploring it as a more artistic medium in the last several decades, and obviously some people longer than that, but it's a very technical craft and technical art. So yeah, taking an idea and putting it out in the world, that's where the art process happens, is from your brain into your medium and then out to the world. And you have to have some technical skills with any of these things, with painting and sculpting and printmaking. You have to know how to do it. But sometimes the best things are people who do it different, and they've learned something new, or they can put something new in the world. So those questions keep going as far as like, is your experience the art, or is it something new you're bringing to the table? I don't know the answer, I guess.
I love that question. I've been working at the Ink People for about 3.5 years now, and our what we typically tell people is that, you know, if you make art, you're an artist. We don't have, you know, we're not going to gatekeep art making. If it makes you happy, if you're, you know, doing something creative. And I hear from a lot of folks like, oh, I just don't have a creative bone in my body. I don't know that I believe that. I think everybody's got something. Maybe they haven't found it yet. But, you know, whether it's someone who just like kind of finds themselves doodling absentmindedly, or you know, putting paper clips together, or whatever it happens to be, like there's something that's in there, but, you know, maybe they just haven't found their medium yet.
And you always have to start somewhere, you know, and so that's why I want everyone to, on some level, think of themselves as an artist. You know, I have this funny bet going with this other painter, John Crater, where every day we have to do something we don't want to do, something off of our to-do list, or something we kind of know we should do, but we don't really feel like doing it. And if we don't, then we have to Venmo the other person $10. And so for me, I've been meaning to get back into drawing for months. And the other day, I didn't normally think of it as an art related thing. Like I could use art to satisfy my $10 bet with John, but I was like, yeah, I've been putting this off for a long time. So I just went ahead and said, okay, today I'm going to draw for my bet. And then since then I've been drawing every day. And then it's just about momentum. You start your mind going in that direction, and the synapses start feeling comfortable moving in along that highway they're creating, and it just becomes a more and more interesting pursuit, and you just got to get started.
And this kind of brings me to one of the thoughts that I've always had, you know, Talvi, what you were saying at the beginning about, you know, Humboldt County having more artists per capita than any other county in California. And to me, what's impressive about that is that these are people who claim on the census that they are an artist. I mean, sure, many of us work a day job that isn't us making art, but when they did their census, they wrote down that they were an artist. And I think that is incredible, because imagine how many more creative folks there are in our community that didn't say that, you know, that are absolutely artists, but that's not what they put down on their census.
I heard that it was income tax. It was a statistic from people claiming they're artists on their income tax forms. And so then that makes me wonder, are they making all their money as an artist, or do they have some other revenue up here in Humboldt County that they might want to claim some of it as art?
So they're putting it in finger quotes then.
Yeah.
An artist.
kind of like I'm a philosopher, you know. Don't get paid for it, but I pontificate quite often. Monica, I know you have to go after this break, or after the next break. So I usually at the end of the show, we do a round robin where everybody gets a few minutes. So I want to give you a few minutes to give information about North Coast Open Studios, perhaps about Ink People as well. You get a couple moments to tell listeners or our viewers on channel 12 what they would what you want them to take with them.
Yeah, thanks, Talvi. So, North Coast Open Studios is an annual event. We are always the first 2 weekends in June, regardless of what other events get added to the first 2 weekends in June. We are open to artists who want to participate. I try to make it very clear that that this is a registration event, not a application event. If you create and you want to participate in this, I want you to participate. It is open to all ages. It is open to all medium. It is open to all experience levels. And I think that's really important, in this community, or really in any community. Like I said earlier, we're not gatekeeping who gets to participate in North Coast Open Studios. For more information, you can always go to northcoastopenstudios.com. We are a Dreammaker project of the Ink People. You can find more information on Ink People Center for the Arts at inkpeople.org. That is INK people.org. And, we are very active for North Coast Open Studios on Instagram and Facebook. So if you've got questions, you can always shoot me a message on either of those platforms. Or, if you call the Ink People during the week, I may be the one answering the phones. But I do love how many phone calls we get this time of year, even when I'm not the one answering. It's like, ooh, that's an Ink People question. I love it.
So the fun question is where to start first? What would you recommend for somebody, like where should they go first just to start their journey through all the artist worlds?
I like what Andrew was saying about going to open studios before participating in open studios. Sorry, it's getting kind of racket around here. So I think you kind of start by going out and visiting artists. Maybe they're people you know, maybe they're people you've heard about, or maybe they're the people that just, when you look at the Eureka map, they're the people who are just down the street from you. Mm-hmm. Go visit their studio, have conversations with them. I think everybody pretty much that is, on this self-guided art tour is going to encourage you to create and do the thing that you love doing. What you do with it beyond that, totally up to you. If you're ready to share it publicly, or if you want to keep it to yourself, or if you want to put it on social media, or if you want to enter in a gallery show, you do you. And we want to see it, and we want to encourage you doing that. As far as participating in North Coast Open Studios goes, I typically open registration about the end of February or early March every year. I tried to get the word out through social media, through print media, through broadcast media, short of people who are living under a rock on purpose. I always hope that you're going to hear about it. And I also encourage the participating artists to help get the word out to the other folks that they know, just in case they haven't heard about it yet. I do get some sponsorship funding each year. I want to give a shout out to Coast Central Credit Union. They give us a sponsorship every year for our youth and up and coming artists. A handful of folks who may not get to participate or feel like they can't because they can't afford the registration fees. So that sponsorship pays for up to 5 artists to participate without having payment for registration be a barrier to their participation.
Well, that is awesome. Thank you, Monica, for being on the show. We'll get back to the rest of the Thursday Night Talk North Coast Open Studios artist episode in just a moment, and we'll come back and chat with Colleen and Andrew. I've got some more questions for you guys. So cheers. See you in a moment. Welcome back to Thursday Night Talk. I'm your local host, Talvi Fried. We just had to say farewell for the moment to Monica Topping, who is the administrative director for the Ink People and the North Coast Open Studios event coordinator, as well. She is a participating artist with her glass beadwork using recycled glass, a lot of pandemic bottles, Artist of the Year 2020, which is brilliant. And we are now going to be talking to Andrew. Well, we've all been chatting to Andrew Daniel, local painter, as well as Colleen Clifford, stained glass artist. And I wanted to ask, we have some time before the round robin, just what got you into art? What caused you to go, I'm going to pick up a paintbrush and become an actual artist and actually dedicate. I kind of assume everybody still has day jobs, because I don't know any artists who don't have at least multiple jobs, though. What caused you to go, I'm going to try to actually like make a living off of this?
Well, I learned early on in high school that to get into the art classes was tricky. You had to like really push to get in because they were so popular, and I really wanted to do it. So it was just all about wanting to try, and that was kind of the impetus then. And I learned early on that I'm much more of a creator of like building something, engineering something to put it together, rather than two-dimensional work, which I also still love, but I really enjoyed the engineering of things. And so I never thought I'd be an artist, but it just kind of kept coming back to my life. And the same thing happened in college. I wanted to do art classes, so I knew that I had to sign up to be an art major to do so. and I graduated with a studio art degree, doing metals and jewelry making. And stained glass came back into my life as I was working at a stained glass lamp company, and worked on glass again after having learned in high school. So it came back into my life. And then when I left that job about 7 years ago, my kids were younger, and I thought, well, I can stay home with them and I can kind of keep working toward this business. And it has just grown and grown, and it is my only job, though I have my 2 kids, and the glass itself has a number of, kind of jobs within it. I make custom pieces, I work at a gallery, and I also teach classes. So I kind of piecemeal together different things within that artistic umbrella, which I love doing. It's a lot of different components of it, but it kind of fulfills all aspects of my brain, and I can make it work. The family makes it work, and it's I don't know if it's part-time or full-time. I'm always out in my studio when I get a chance.
Definitely sounds like full-time then.
Yeah.
I mean, and you have kids, that's 3 full-time jobs for every skill that a person has.
Right.
So Andrea, what is your artistry path, artistic past
origin
path
story?
to get where you are now?
My origin story. I used to go to museums with my dad, and just really loved when I look back at it now, just the romance and the beauty of all these well-crafted artworks. And at one point I saw Van Gogh. It's not a famous Van Gogh, but it had this view of a road, and I all the other artworks felt like they had like this detached quality to them. But when I looked at the Van Gogh, maybe because he cropped it differently, maybe because he brings such intensity to his mark making and his color and everything, I felt like I was looking through his eyes at the scene. And it felt like this very immediate connection to someone who's, you know, passed on 100 years ago. And I carried that with me for a long time. And so now I very much want to find ways to see the world in a sensitive way and see if I can express that to other people. And yeah, I guess I jumped into art school and everything, not really having any kind of a financial plan for it. Just this romantic ideal. And so, yeah, as soon as I graduated from school, I ended up in AmeriCorps and working with children with special needs. And I've kind of followed that path as the way I make my bread and butter. And then I work on the art around the rest of my schedule.
Do you find that you integrate your artistic skills that you've learned into outside of just creating art for yourself? Like if you work with kids or have kids, do you find yourself kind of infusing their lives with your artsy fartsy ways?
Yeah, I worked in elementary schools for probably 7 years. I went from AmeriCorps into elementary schools, and so I do art projects with them and stuff. The art projects I found were difficult because I was mostly in an after school program, and so I just associated the art projects with having to clean up. It was very hard to clean up after all these kids, and you'd have kindergartners through fifth graders all sit down at your table to make art, and they're all completely different skills. So how do you make an art project that was relevant to everybody for a period of time and stuff? So it was a very challenging environment, but I did find ways to work my creativity in wherever I could.
Mine's a really not kid-friendly medium.
Yeah.
It's been a challenge, and I've shown them how to do it a little bit. But when they come out to my shop with no shoes on them, I'm like, "Oh, come in here! Don't come in here!" So it's we work on it in the house. We'll draw together, and it's fun to see them play with colors. That's one of my favorite things to watch, is other people bringing together color palettes and doodling and coming up with designs. But most of my work doesn't really incorporate parenthood necessarily, but it's always on the mind. It's hard not to think that everything's connecting everything somewhere down the line.
It's very fair. For those out there listening, which I don't think they would be still listening if they're not into art or what's happening in Humboldt County. So for those listeners who are listening, and maybe they're like, you know what, I needed some inspiration or something. How do you view the world as an artist? Have fun with that question, answering that. I will.
Big question. It's a big question. I mean, I'll pick up on what we were talking about before with our feelings that everyone's an artist, and I think everyone just views it differently. And so the art is the process of taking what we see and putting it down on paper or putting it into some form that people can see. And so that's what's so great about it, is you get to actually see people's ideas come out. And I have this long question in my mind about what is the art? Is it what I see in my head, and therefore as the artist I have to work hard to get what's in my head out on my page or in my glass? or is the art what comes out with my hand and my project being made, because it changes along the way. You know, what your hand does with the impulses in your brain comes up with a different image. So there is a part of you that has to do the work to try to interpret what's coming out and get it out of your brain properly. But at the same time, you can come up with an entirely new idea if you're just kind of flowing with it. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I just think that's what's so great is everyone does it differently. And you know, you'll see what people have made, but it might not have been what they started with. It might have been, has gone through a series of filters and processes that kind of are able to bring it to you in whatever form they bring it to you with.
Yeah, that whole intuitive relationship to the ideas and how they start out with one thing and then the intuitive journey takes them wherever they need to go. It's really fascinating to see it. So many different voices. For me personally, I'm fascinated with making art as a tool for seeing nature, whether nature is portraiture or whether it's, you know, setting up outside and watching the weather patterns shift and the wind move the trees and the, you know, the mists obscure the distance. I find that, like, I've done art that was abstract, and I found that I would walk around life looking for shapes and looking for colors. And then I've done art that's from life, like my landscape paintings, and I find myself looking for subtleties in nature and just discovering all these different details that I never would have discovered without spending an hour or 12 hours, 20 hours looking at something and just really, sorry, there's a dog coming in the house making some noise. Things reveal themselves as you spend more and more time looking and trying to recreate, going through the method of recreating it.
So we are nearing the end of the show. And just as I had asked Monica to do before the last break, because she had to go, you each get a couple minutes to tell, you know, it's your time. You can talk about whatever you want, though. As a starting point, you know, what would you want someone listening right now to take with them from listening to this or watching it?
I would say that they should come out to North Coast Open Studios as their selling point. They should check it out and go visit their neighbors who are artists that they weren't sure what they do all day. Go check out the process, like go see what they do, because as we've been talking about, it really is the way to connect with the people who make the beautiful things that you see in the stores and the galleries. And that's my favorite part. It's the way to connect with your community and your friends and your customers, people who want to learn about it. And there, you know, that's my favorite part, is to meet the people who are the most interested. And my other favorite part is that it gives me an excuse to clean up my studio and put some things away that have been sitting there for months and months. So I'm excited, and my studio will be open 10 to 5, as everyone else will be this weekend. I live in Manila. There's only 2 of us in Manila, me and Monument Settings, Jonah Kavanaugh. So if you're coming to Manila, you got to hit us up, and we're the connecting road between Arcata and Eureka, so it's really not too far off the beaten path. But I'll have some snacks, some goodies. I've got greeting cards up all the way up to custom work that's hanging in the windows. And you can sign up for a glass class. You can check out all the work in progress that is all over my studio right now. Hopefully some of it will get done before Saturday. But I'm excited to meet everybody who stops by.
How do people find you? Do you sell, you said you sold online?
Yeah, so during the pandemic, I really upped my my online presence. So I've got an Etsy site, and I also sell in some local stores. I'm a member of the Trinidad Art Gallery, and that's where some of my larger windows are hanging, some gallery pieces. And I also sell through Humboldt Mercantile and Seapod and Arcata, and people can connect with me just through email and see if I've got what they're interested in stock.
What is your email address and what is your Etsy account name for people?
Let's see if I can remember. Well, my email is colleen@colleencliffordart.com. 2 L's, 2 E's, 2 F's. And then my Etsy, I believe, is Colleen Clifford Glass. If you search for that, or yeah, there's lots of links on my website, so you'll find it if you're looking.
And the website is Colleen.
ColleenCliffordArt.com.
ColleenCliffordArt.com. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much, Colleen.
Thank you.
Andrew, it's your turn. What would you like to take with them from this?
So one of the things earlier on, you were asking, where do people start when they want to start with Open Studios? And so if you open up the catalog, there's 100 images in there, and you just pick the ones that call to you, or maybe you want some new ceramics for your house or whatever, and you might want to check out a few different ceramicists or whatever. And then there's an online, all the photos are online too, northcoastopenstudios.com as well. I definitely would love for you guys to come out and visit me. There's 3 different artists on my street, California Avenue and Arcata. And this is the time of year when I go through all of my deep storage of artwork, and I pull everything out that I think anybody might be the biggest bit interested in, and I put it up all over the walls. And so there's multiple rooms just hung from floor to ceiling with art, multiple tabletops with small art, greeting cards and everything. And it just runs the gamut. I've got some real hippy dippy psychedelic stuff here. I've got lots of landscapes, obviously, and I've been making these kind of kooky animal portraits and stuff. So there's lots to see. And honestly, whenever I'm going through it, I'm pricing things, I just tell myself, well, what's the price that might get rid of this thing? Because there's so much stuff that's been around for years. And so the stuff that is recent and it's relevant to what I show, that stuff is more like a full retail price. But the stuff that I don't see myself showing ever again, I knock the price down, because I want it to no longer be stored at my place. I want it to be enjoyed and out in the world. So yeah, I invite you guys to come and help me pay off my art supplies for the year.
I love that.
That's super fair. Do you also have a website?
Yeah, artofandrewdaniel.com. Or you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Art of Andrew Daniel, and you can message me through either of those apps.
Awesome. I want to thank you both. For those listening, North Coast Open Studios has been the topic the entire time. The pamphlets are out at every museum, gallery out there. It's a pretty blue and pink booklet. It says Open Studios on it. Grab one, and Colleen, you have to talk so that they can see you while you're holding it up.
Okay, yes, here it is. It's got a beautiful painting on the cover. I don't know who made this one, but we're in here. There's great maps that show the different communities. That'll take you around to the different areas of Humboldt. As someone mentioned, it's a great way to get to other places that you've never been before and see some cool new places.
Thank you. Thank you. You're doing my job for me. I love that. And we're pretty near all the time that we have today. I do want to thank our panel. We have painter Andrew Daniel. We've got stained glass artist Colleen Clifford, ColleenCliffordArt.com, and art by Andrew Daniel.
Art of Andrew Daniel.
What was that?
Art of Andrew Daniel.
artofandrewdaniel.com. Earlier, we had Monica Topping on the show, administrative director for the Ink People, North Coast Open Studios event coordinator, participating artist, rutabaga queen. Monica does it all. And,
She does.
thank you all for being on the show. We'll be back next week with another Thursday Night Talk. If you have topics or suggestions for the show, or if you want more information on any of the artists or North Coast Open Studios, feel free to email us at kzzh@accesshumboldt.net. The show does replay on Friday evenings at 8 p.m. right here on KZZH 96.7 FM. You can watch the show on Access Humboldt's YouTube channel. Just look up Access Humboldt, hit subscribe, do all that good stuff. And you can catch us on Channel 12 if you have an actual television, which is impressive if you do. Though if you do, turn it to Channel 12 because it'll be playing throughout the weekend. I want to thank you so much for joining us. I'm your local host, and I guess I can call myself an artist somewhat too.
Yes,
This is my art, is talking to people.
yes.
Thank you, everyone, and I will see all our, well, I guess I won't see our listeners, but I'll be talking with you next week right here on KZZH 96.7 FM. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.